And welcome to the Man Cave Show. Today I'm here with a very special guest, someone who I always give a hard time to on the pulpit, and I have a real good time doing it. And we're in our third series for the Finding a Preacher for Northside Baptist Church. So now I want to interview Brother Don and just ask him a few questions about retirement and how this church was founded, Northside Baptist was founded, and kind of tell us the story of his career and everything. So anyway, Brother Don, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Usually you're out there and I'm picking at you at a distance. I can't do that here. So.
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay.
There's no standards.
No boundaries. Okay.
And
some boundaries, yes.
But I didn't introduce ourselves, but this is the Man Cave Show. So
yeah,
did I say that?
Yeah, you said that.
Well, that's what happens when you get old.
Dementia.
Something like that.
Yeah, it did.
So anyway, a couple of things. You're retired now. How's retirement turn out for you?
Not as unexpected. I found myself doing exactly what I heard everybody else say, that don't know how I ever had time to work. So,
okay.
So between all the schedules and that sort of thing, and trying to get the extra work done and a few little jobs for people here and there, I stay busy. So.
Well, being retired means you just work a little harder, right?
Just work a little differently.
Oh, I see.
Don't have as much time in the saddle in the office, studying, trying to get some sermons together and things like that. So visitation, and I've left the visitation up to the professionals now. So and the sermonizing. So
also, I think you have to, like you said, you had a big change in, especially getting ready for on Sundays and putting the word out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How much of a change has that been for you? Has it been hard, or has it been fairly easy for you?
Some of it's a relief, because one of the things I've said about the ministry, that to more than one person, and my own son, who's now going to be pastor here, that probably one of the hardest things about the ministry, in one sense of the word, and there's a lot of things that are difficult, and I'm not one of those who wants to whine and say how tough a time pastors have and that sort of thing. So that's not what I'm saying. The difficulty is that it's always before you. Mm-hmm. You constantly have a message or a wedding or a funeral or something that you're preparing for. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of guys I think probably who have a kind of a road approach to those, but I never saw that as a biblical approach. Now, weddings and funerals are a little different, but every funeral has to be kind of adjusted to who you're talking about. And of course, we're talking about the Lord. But those things are always, somebody said to me one time, said, "Pastor, that was a good message." And I said, they don't say that often.
I hear you.
But I said to them that, don't quit praying, because next week's a new week. And every time you step in the pulpit, you're expected to deliver a message that people are not going to go to sleep on. So that's
kind of like me. I always sleep on you.
Yeah. You'd snore. So.
Denise always says, "Well, how come you were sleeping through the sermon?" And I told her, anytime you sleep through a sermon, that means it was a good sermon.
That was an easy sermon.
There you go.
Didn't get your attention much, so.
But there are.
You do know that the notes that the pastor has on that kind of along the way as you read, weak point, yell loudly. To keep David awake. So,
yeah.
No.
I'll tell you what, there's lots of times I go home, I got some sore ribs, that's for sure. What did you say that about the preacher for? It just came out. I don't know. There are a few times where you've done some preaching, and I'm listening, paying attention, I'm really into the sermon. All of a sudden you say something, and it just goes right out. And it's like, Denise looks at me and says, "I know you just didn't say that." And I said, "I don't think I said that either, but I did."
You have to respond. So
exactly.
Maybe you missed your calling. Maybe you were supposed to be preaching. So no.
No, maybe I missed my calling not being here earlier to pester you.
Oh, okay. Well, to tell you the truth, it's a relief almost not to have to prepare all the time and be ready in that sense. But the other side of the coin is that you miss it. You miss being involved in the things. You know, anybody who's working any job, and I don't consider this a job. This is a calling. This is an opportunity, but it's a huge responsibility if you take it seriously. Because every time you step in that pulpit, you could have eternal lives in your hands, so to speak. You know, and it's not our responsibility to save folks or to change their lives in that sense of the word, but it is our responsibility to get the message across. It's my responsibility as a pastor to proclaim it in a way that would be keep you awake. You know, get you hear the whole message. So it is a huge responsibility, like I said, if you really take it to its full fruition and understand what you're doing. So if you don't, you ought not be doing it. So I'm convinced there's a lot of folks that do it for a paycheck. The scripture calls that a hireling, someone who's he's trying to get bigger and better, maybe jet planes and. We won't be too critical of those things, but
some people,
there's some folks there that ought not be there, obviously. And
right.
sometimes you wonder if you should be there because you don't hold the standards very high for your in terms of your own life and lifestyle. If you're not careful, you have to be real careful. And I'm convinced that a person who's not looking at themselves and doing the best they can and working at it diligently by His grace. It's always by His grace. Then they don't need to be there. So, and we don't need to be there. So sometimes you wonder about yourself at that point. So
well, if I don't catch you up, I'm going to sit here and talk for another 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Keep on talking.
Yeah.
So. But one of the things I want to touch bases on is when you first founded Northside Baptist. There's a unique story that you always tell, and I always love hearing about the story. So if you would, for those that don't know the story of Northside Baptist, how we became here as a building and as a congregation is a very, very blessed story, I think.
Well, I don't want to get too detailed on some of the things there, but or be critical of anybody. I think by God's providence and His will, we did something that was that would not have happened had not some other events occurred that weren't real positive. So, but we were pastor of a church locally, and I won't go into all that. And it takes you about 3 years to actually become pastor of a church.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was there about 2.5 years, and don't think that I ever really got to be pastor. I don't think they gave me that opportunity. There were many folks that I think who felt like that I wasn't the guy for the job, but that's neither here nor there.
You know what? That's kind of the same thing that Denise and I were doing when we were looking for a church. Same thing is when we first got married. And you married us, of course. One of the best things in our lives that ever happened. And
did you ask Denise that before you came?
But the thing is, when like what you were just saying about being a pastor. The thing that came to me was it's the same thing looking for a church. When we were looking for a church, after we got married and you married us, we started going around looking for a church. And there's just not one church that we liked. And then, of course, Denise's parents were coming here.
Right.
And we said, well, we came a couple of times like, oh, okay, yeah, Pastor Don, he's pretty good. Let's go look for some, see. I mean, you have to find that church.
Yeah.
And I'm sure just like a preacher,
it's
you
like,
had to find the right church. Just like a person for the congregation has to find the right preacher. And we found the right preacher.
Little different in a way, but and I say in a way because it's you're almost in the hands of the Lord to place you, and at the same time, you make the decisions. That's one of those difficult areas in the Baptist world, in where we do a kind of a congregational led governmental style, because they have to vote for a pastor. But so there's a lot of things involved. Won't go into all that as to how you get at a particular place. But let me finish the rest of that story. So, we were there, and they decided that it wasn't the place for me, and I kind of left at one point because we went into a the deacons, and there was not a consensus. It was a group over here and a group over here. Could have probably struggled and gotten either run off or stayed. But I decided this is it. And I walked out and I said, you guys let me know when you decide what you want to do, and I'm going home. And that was on a Sunday night. They were waiting on me to preach. And I regret a little bit not going ahead and preaching. But it was one of those things where it just wasn't in me that night to do that. So we went home, and during the next week I got a little call from somebody, and a member of the church, and they said, where are you going to church next week? And I said, I don't know. I'd have to be choosing a church, see. And she said, well, meet with us. And I said, who's us? And she said, well, there's this group, and about 35, 40 people. I said, I did not intend to split a congregation, and I don't want anybody leaving a church on my account. And I said, that's not what I'm here for.
Right.
Or why I was here. And she said, we're going anyway, whether you do or don't. We're leaving. We've had it. We're not in this anymore. So I said, well, that's fine. I said, I'll be there with you. She said, you're preaching. And I said, wait a minute, time out. I said, I didn't sign up for this to be the preacher. I didn't know what they were going to do. And she said, well, you're the one. You're going to preach. And I said, wait a minute now. And I don't remember the full discussion. I just remember we talked about it for just a few minutes there. And she said, you were preaching. And she was pretty adamant about it. And
I'd imagine who this is.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you who it is, but probably ought not to. So
well, that's all right. I know who you're talking about, Miss Lynn.
Yeah. No.
What, Miss Lynn?
No, not Miss Lynn, no.
Oh, okay.
It was Louise's daughter, so.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, long story short,
Anyway.
we go and preach and just.
Sorry, Miss Lynn.
There was a sense of freedom. There was a sense of positiveness, a joy, a weight lifted. So I went back next week and preached. And we kept preaching and began to look for a place to be, and found a little place down on 5th Street eventually. We went through going to the park down here. I'm trying to think of the mayor's family's name. There's anyway, the park right downtown here, and I'm sorry, my brain went dead on that one. So, but we went there for a while. We went to a little house over here off of Park Avenue, and finally ended up on 5th Street down there, and had a pretty good congregation. And the old building had mold. The ceiling tiles were dropping down and moldy, and leaks all in it. And anyway, long story short is we just kept trucking, and there's a long story here, so I don't want to get into all that, but we started looking for a piece of property and looked at one outside where the 429, just outside the 429 over there, and it fell through. We didn't think that was probably it. This piece of property kind of came up on the horizon, and it belonged to, good heavens.
But if I remember right,
the nursery
you guys,
folks.
if I remember right, the story that I really wanted to hear was the, not that story.
No, that's fine.
The story I really was fascinated by is how the Lord worked as far as the stock going up and down.
Oh, that's where I was headed.
And then that's when you guys bought the property.
That was where I was headed.
Saying, don't buy it now, not now, not now. And then when the stock hit just at the
Exactly.
right time, you bought.
Don't tell my story.
Anyway, but that's a great story.
Well, let me just give you a synopsis on that thing, and that's one of the things I'm up against here. We could talk for about 30 minutes on that one story, but when the people, we found out it was for sale, I told the folks to go pray about it, because I said, we don't know where the Lord wants us or whether we can do this thing. We didn't have any money, other than what was coming in from week to week, and was doing all right, but there was no funds available. There's no reserve. We just were going, and they were taking care of a little of my salary, and I was working part-time as well. But this particular choice came up, and they prayed about it. And my instructions to them were, and I felt like the Lord led me to say this, You pray, and I don't want you to give me your opinion on whether you think we ought to buy it or not. I want you to go home, pray about it, and see what the Lord says. And if whatever He says, you bring back what you think He really wants us to do. Not whether we buy the property or not, but whether He wants us to do this, to move ahead. So they went home, they prayed, they came back to wait is the word. Just wait. And it came out of folks saying we can't come to a decision. We feel like that's what God, He left us kind of in limbo on it, kind of some degree. So we did. A little later on, we asked the same question, sent folks home, basically, and you forgive me if I get some of these details wrong, because it's been a while.
Right.
But that's the second kind of scenario there. And ultimately, about the third time this thing came up, we were still waiting because we felt like God said wait. Well, somebody had given us some stock about that time. And it was probably 1/4 maybe of the figure that we needed to buy this piece of property.
Right.
We were waiting as we were instructed to do. And one of the guys got a little anxious, and he decided he would buy the property and give us half of it.
Right.
And he would use it for his buildings and that sort of thing. You didn't know that part of the story.
No, I didn't know that.
So he chased the guy down on the side of the road and basically signed up for the piece of property. And that stock began, and I don't know when it started this, but it was within a couple of weeks period there, it started climbing. And it climbed past the amount we needed.
Oh, yeah.
About $25,000 worth. And we obviously sold it at that point, and hung on to about $25,000 of it, by the way. Had it for some time. We may still have that stock. I don't even know, to tell you the truth, right off there. But sold it, bought the property from the guy who bought the property, or who was talking about buying it. I don't remember exactly how that detail. He was in on that. I was not in on that.
Yeah.
But then it belonged to the church, and it all happened because the next, maybe within 2 weeks, that stock dropped like a rock.
Oh.
You couldn't have paid for your hat with it. No, it was still, we still had about $25,000.
So that was divine intervention.
You can say, well, I don't believe in miracles, but if you watch that happen, you'd have to say, this is pretty close.
Oh, yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
we didn't have the funds to do it with, and then we started trying to get the building together, thought we were gonna owe into, I think this is 600,000 or so, maybe more than $500,000. And then we finished, we never had any debt.
And the rest is history.
And we didn't do any great drives or anything to pay it off.
Right.
And we had some people who were interested and had enough. God was blessing them and helping us to do some of these things. But, it wasn't calculated. It wasn't anything we did. So there's more than one little miracle here that put us here. We haven't grown like I'd like to see us grow. But I look back now and wonder if what we had here is not exactly what God wanted here. So
Right.
a lot of folks, I go back over the pictures now and I see how things have changed and how many people have come through here.
Now, that's another
New
thing,
people
yeah.
are here, and people that come and clean the facilities for nothing, and because
That's another thing I want to talk to you about too. You've
Yeah.
been here what, 20 years now?
22.
22 years. This got to be
I've
a
been
lot.
here more than that now. 22 years as pastor.
But right,
Yeah.
but there's got to be a lot of memories, a lot of good memories, and a lot of things.
If I could remember.
A lot of things that happens to somebody,
Yeah.
especially at church, and
Yeah.
a pastor, the people that you've met,
Yeah.
and things that the church has done.
We've loved people and lost people, and I mean
Yeah.
lost. Some of them have passed away, and
Mhm.
some of the folks are some of our best friends that, and as a pastor, I don't think you make that BFF type stuff.
Mhm.
You have a relationship with all of your folk, and a lot of folks become real close, and there's some real special folks in the ministry.
Right.
As you go through. We've spent the weekend, week before last, with a family down in Arcadia that we knew, and we watched what God did in their lives, you know, and how He worked to reach other people through their lives, and there's just a multitude of those things. We don't have time for all of
I
that.
know.
And I don't have the memory for it, to tell you the truth.
Now, okay, so now you've gone through, and
Mhm.
did you have in mind how many years you want to stay here, or you just let God guide you on when you want to retire? And what kind of
I didn't have
decision?
any intentions a week or two before we got a diagnosis of Helen on that cancer that we would. I was feeling like that at my age that probably I ought to turn it over to the younger guys.
Right.
You know, in those terms. But I had no intention of retiring in that sense, not immediately. You know,
Right.
getting a little bit of the fatigue syndrome creeping in, and don't have the energy you used to have. You know. So.
Now you retired and everything, and you got a church going, and I got to ask you, you have to be a proud little daddy here when your son takes over the church that you started here, and what are your feelings on that?
My feelings on that are, well, let me tell you that intentionally I stayed out of the process.
I know I asked you a couple of times.
Yeah, and some people would say to me, why don't we just get your son to be pastor of the church? You know, that was offhand. I'd never mentioned anything to them, and of course he's preached here a couple of times. They knew him. They knew of him. They didn't know him that well. But I had no input on that, period.
Right.
He sent his resume in. He actually was teaching at a school, Orangewood Academy.
Now, not to cut you off real quick, but when I was talking to Brother Randy Simmons, he was saying that Brother Aaron, he was the first resume that he got.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
No, well,
So, just to let you
he
know.
knew about it, obviously. I had mentioned the fact that they were. I didn't think he'd be interested because he was very well appreciated at the school he was at. The kids loved him. I didn't, you know, so your own children, you think sometimes you wonder if they'll ever be able to put two bolts together, you know, and bolt a nut, you know. So you know, and they're special, but you don't see in them sometimes what they can do or can't do. You know, you don't know all their capacities. So I just at a distance I'm hearing how well they loved him, and he was the Bible teacher at the high school, and I don't know if they even have middle school, but anyway, long story short is he just was well placed and thought he was happy as a lark with what he was doing, and then they changed leadership there, and the lady that came in there was a little different and didn't seem to have him on her. She had him on her scope, but I'm afraid for the wrong reason. Anyway, I don't want to be negative.
Right.
This might go out. Somebody might hear that, but just wasn't sitting as well. So he sent his resume in. Just probably kind of as a let me see. Maybe that's where the Lord would. Maybe He's changing my direction, kind of thing. And I haven't talked to him about it. I'm just kind of assuming what he was thinking. But he sent his resume in. So I'm, they're working over a period. That's my front door ringing there, so, on my ring. Anyway, so they're going through the resumes, and it took a year
It took a long time.
year and a half.
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
when I interview him next week. I'm going to say, how did you last for a whole year?
Well,
that's a long time.
There you go. The God's timing. It's almost, when you look back on it, you can see it meshing in perfect timing. I say perfect. He was actually selling his home, and didn't know he didn't know whether he was going to be at Orangewood, and they just had the home was always a problem. It was right across the street from Orangewood. Their mother-in-law, father-in-law had helped them get from one home to another home, just trying to help them along. They only have one child, and it's her, my daughter-in-law. And so they kind of helped them do that. And then they looked around, they found a home almost less than a half a mile from my place. And they're looking for a place on a lake because their son loves to fish, and they're lake people. They've always wanted
It's
to
kind
go.
of like the place I'd like to retire.
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
lake, yeah.
Everybody liked to retire there. But they found one, and they were able to sell this home and parlay it into the home right down the street from me. This is long before they knew anything about what Northside was going to do. And I'm just saying that God was in the works.
God just made it all happen.
And it didn't have to happen that way. They could have been across the town and still done it, you know. But the Lord seen it. They moved over this way before any of these things came down. And as a matter of fact, it came down to like 3 men, I think, 3 different guys, pastors, and one eventually dropped out because he found another place to go. And then I think it went on and on and on, and I kept thinking, and the guys kept coming in and said, we're going to make a decision when we feel like it's time. We just don't feel like they were doing the wait thing too.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, I wonder when they're going to make a decision on it. Because Aaron and this other guy, I knew that. That I was privileged to know. Because one of the guys on the committee and actually told me one day, your son is one of our final choices. And I said, oh, okay. So, no big deal. Because I've learned to wait on the Lord, because he didn't need to be here if God's not in it. So I'm not going to push. And it's far be it from me to try to make things happen for God.
Right.
And I think that's one of the dangers that we run in this. When as Christians we think, we just show God what He needs to do. Well, you want to make God laugh, so make your plans. Make your own plans. So, but he. It came down to the final agenda, and I got a phone call coming in. Would you believe? Sorry about that. So
That's all right.
and I won't answer it. I'll let it ring.
Sounds like a cricket.
Let me see who it is. By the way, can I do that?
Yeah.
Yes. Just check to see if it's my daughter-in-law. Would you believe?
Go ahead.
So no, I won't answer it. So anyway, and then they said we're going to call him in view of a call here after all this time. You know how long it took, because it just
Seemed like it took forever.
And it seemed like in that last one they were down to 2, they wouldn't make a decision. Well, before this all, and when they decided to call him, make a call in view of a call, it was because the other guy found another place to go. He probably got tired of waiting too. It was right about the beginning of school, and everybody needs to know where their kids are going to school and that kind of thing. It would help to have made a decision in the middle of the summer if you wanted to do it logically and helpfully. But our guys are praying, and they said we're praying every week and waiting on God, and God does seem to do that sometimes. If ain't got it, wait. I'll let you know.
Hey, if you like our show, give us a big thumbs up or subscribe, or go to mancavemolly.com.